Chapter 11. Friday early evening. What is it? Mac asked from behind her, pouring a fresh cup of coffee. It's a warning note to Steve to stay away from Penny, Doreen said. She held it out for him. The scans may be problematic, he said, since notes are on the back of some of these docs. She frowned. I thought I'd sorted everything that had stuff on the back, but maybe not. She checked the rest of the stack. Oh, that's the only one misplaced. Interesting, Mac said with a frown as he placed the picture on the kitchen table. All it proves, though, is that Penny and Steve had a relationship. And she lied about it. And did George know? No idea. But since it seemed like George had committed suicide, that may have been one of the many reasons why. I'd hate to think that George knew of his wife's infidelity. It's an awful feeling. And of course you know that firsthand. I'm sorry. She nodded. But it doesn't really matter anymore because that part of my life is over. Mac tapped the notepad in front of her. Oh, Doreen said, remembering her list. That reminds me. Have you talked to your brother yet? He shook his head. We did talk a few days ago, or maybe last week. I've been so busy that I haven't gotten an update from him on disbarring your divorce lawyer. Sorry, Doreen said. I'm definitely responsible for a lot of the work coming your way. You are, he said with a chuckle. But I'm not complaining. Crystal is coming home this weekend. With her mind too full of Penny and Steve, it took Doreen a moment to remember who Crystal was. When she did, she cried out and raced to his side. Really? Yes, he said, grinning down at her. The current plan has her flying in tomorrow morning. Good. I thought it would take much longer. Well, the fact of the matter is, she's Canadian, so the embassy there in Mexico helped her get home right away. That's so soon. It is, he said. While you're still scanning, let's go sort some more of the kitchen's things. They returned to start with the canned food. He chuckled at seeing the potatoes, then set it off on one side. What we'll do, he said, is separate everything that's over its due date. If it's under a year late, the food bank will take it. If it's over a year, it's for the garbage can. Most of the food was past their dates. As they worked, Mac said, we often see this in old people's homes. They forget that they've bought something, and they keep rebuying it. Then he chuckled. This flour is quite old, and some of these things look rancid. I suggest we get some garbage bags and just toss out the bulk of this. When you do some baking, you can start fresh and buy small quantities. The whole ordeal took them 20 minutes. And as soon as they got all the garbage bagged, Mac took it outside and dumped the bags into the trash can. He ignored the media that snapped his picture. Sorry, he said when he returned to her. But the media will think we're in a relationship, or whatever. She groaned. They just never give up. They'll go away eventually, he said, looking around the kitchen. Maybe you can find some bags to put the rest of these dishes and things in. At least they'll be packed up somewhat. She did just that, but then told him, now my cupboards are bare. Sure, but what you have is what you need, he said with a shrug. And what's gone is stuff you didn't need anyway. She beamed at him. I like that. She walked over to the scanner and set the last group of pages to start scanning. Then she stood guard over the files and eyed Mac as he prepared the pork chops. Without looking up, yet sensing she was looking at him, he asked, Are you leaving Steve alone? She froze. He frowned and turned to her. I didn't mean to upset you, but I do want you to take this seriously. She could see he was gearing up for a really good lecture, so in a small voice she said, I forgot. He narrowed his gaze. And his hands covered with meat juices almost went to his hips. He stopped himself at the last moment and walked to the sink, as if trying to hold on to his temper. He took his time washing his hands before turning around and leaning against the sink. Then he crossed his arms over his chest and in a very soft voice he asked, "What did you forget?" She wrinkled her nose. "I ran into him this morning." "And you're just telling me now?" "I did try to call you," she said in self-defense. "Honest. But I got your voicemail, so you were busy, and I figured maybe I'd given you more than enough work and you didn't want to talk to me." His eyebrows shot up. She shrugged. Besides, there wasn't much to tell. "Let me be the judge of that," Mac said. "Tell me what happened." She relayed a little bit of the event and tried to downplay it. "And did you take it as a threat?" She stared at him, wondering how she should answer, and then decided to be truthful. "Yes," she said gently. "I think I did." "Think?" She nodded. "Okay, so it was likely a threat. But he doesn't know what I know. He doesn't know I have these files. He doesn't know anything." "But you did bring up the gun. He did acknowledge it was his, correct?" She shrugged. "Well, he didn't say, 'Yes, it's my gun,' or 'Yes, I dropped it when I flipped over the fence,' but he was shocked that I knew. And he didn't like the fact that I told him how you guys were coming after him." "You really didn't tell him that, did you?" "Well, I told him that he better have his answers straight before the police get to him." "You realize, of course, he's probably halfway out of the country by now then?" "Maybe not," she said cheerfully. "Honestly, I think he would stick around and make sure I didn't get to talk to anybody else instead. Plus, he's intent on telling everyone how I've made all this up about Penny."